The Cavaliers are currently first in the NBA with a record of 39-9. In years past, their success had been built on a strong defensive unit anchored by the twin tower duo of Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen, but this year it's been all about offense. With an offensive rating of 122.7, they're actually the second most efficient offense in NBA history, behind just last year's Celtics. Of course, there's been a huge offensive boom in recent seasons though, with the emphasis on pace and space, so it's probably more productive to look at each offense relative to the league's average from their respective years. And if we do that, the Cavs right now are more than 8 points ahead of the league average offensive rating. Only 3 teams have ever reached or exceeded 8 points above average. The Mavericks became the first to do so in 2004 with the duo of Steve Nash and Dirk Nowitzki. A year later, Steve Nash joined Phoenix, and the 7 seconds or less Suns became the second team to do so. Fast forward a decade, and the third and final team was the 2016 Warriors, who basically broke the league with their motion offense. You'll notice that all 3 of these teams were transformative in their own way. Those Mavs were one of the first teams to lean into the importance of a floor spacing big when they started Dirk as a full-time 5 to stretch opposing rim protectors and rebounders. For the Suns, it sort of goes without saying. Their pace and space approach was about 15 years ahead of schedule and remains the most revolutionary offense in NBA history. And then you have the Warriors, who took 3-point shooting, ball movement, and screening, and essentially rewrote what we thought we knew about the sport. So for the 2025 Cavs to be among this legendary group is a testament to how ridiculously talented they are, because I'd make the argument that they aren't actually doing anything that transcends the sport. They just happen to be so good at what they do that other teams simply can't keep up. What's the driving force though? Was it the Kenny Atkinson hire and the way he unlocked Evan Mobley as a legitimate creator? Is it Jarrett Allen in the middle, who's currently having the second most efficient scoring season in NBA history? Is it the surplus of shooters and ball handlers across the board that gives them seemingly limitless versatility? Well, all of these things matter a lot and play a critical role in Cleveland's offensive surge. But at the end of the day, an offense of this caliber is driven forward most by the primary guy, or the engine. And while most would point to their leading scorer, Donovan Mitchell, I'd raise the argument that it's been his backcourt partner, Darius Garland, who's truly leading the charge right now. A big emphasis for the Cavs has been playing with pace. They're one of the fastest teams in the game, and it's often Garland who's creating these opportunities. After missed shots, they'll look for Garland to get the ball to, and from there he can start the push. In the open floor, there truly isn't anything he can't do. If one of the wings is streaking out, he'll kick the ball ahead with pinpoint accuracy to create a layup. If there isn't anyone to kick the ball to, he'll use his handle and agility to get into the defense, where he'll often draw help and find the open man for a quality shot. With a head of steam, he's basically impossible to stay in front of. His go-to move is this misdirection dribble, and as soon as he beats his man, he's making the right decision as a playmaker. What I love about Garland though is how his creativity shines on these fast break plays. He's willing to try just about anything as a ball handler with the tools to consistently touch the paint. Then he'll add some flair on these beautiful dimes. And because he's such an elite passer in transition, you'll see a lot of plays where defenses either choose not to pick up the ball at all, giving up an easy lane, or they'll have someone pick up but sit way back to protect the paint, to which he'll counter by hunting for the 3-point line. To make things even more difficult, the Cavs will often set up quick action as soon as Garland crosses half court. So if it was tough to stop him from getting wherever he wanted to go before, imagine that with the help of some screens. One action they really like to run is double drag, with 2 staggered screens for Garland to attack the wing, and the goal is to create enough space for him to turn the corner and attack a backpedaling big. Of course, with 2 staggered screens, that means there has to be a defender in position to pick up the ball off of both. If not, he'll just use the first to step into a pull-up jumper. Sometimes they'll instead set up in horns, where it's still 2 screens, but 1 on either side. Then Garland can choose which way to attack, and again, somebody has to be there to pick him up right away. More times than not though, it's just going to be 1 ball screen set at an angle that allows him to build up that head of steam. From there, he can do what he does best as a driver and playmaker. These immediate actions often catch the defense off guard, and Garland's such a lightning quick decision maker that any slight mishap will be taken advantage of pretty much every time. That's especially easy to notice whenever it's a wing setting the ball screen. Most defenses are going to switch these actions, but by turning the corner with speed, that second defender never even had a chance of picking him up. Also, it just isn't in the defense's best interest to give up a favorable matchup this easily. Like I said, he's pretty impossible to stay in front of and will make the right decision every time he gets near the basket. As a result, some defenses will avoid the switch by having the second defender hedge, but all that does is leave the screener open for a brief moment on a pop, and the Cavs are left with a high quality 3. One really interesting wrinkle with Garland though is that you'll also see him used quite a bit as the screener in these actions. Not only is he a threat to pop into open space as a shooter, if he sees an opening, he'll cut down the lane, where that instant decision making again shows up. I talked a lot about Garland's ability to lead the push. Part of what makes him so unique is that he's arguably just as effective playing off of someone else. Because Cleveland has so many capable ball handlers, he does find himself in a decent amount of off-the-catch situations where he can truly punish the defense in every way imaginable. You'll typically see him find some space to spot up on the 3-point line, and as soon as he sees a closeout coming his way, there's the instant decision making. The speed at which he's able to process the defense and counter is truly among the best in the league. All Draymond does is turn towards him on this one, and that's his cue to float a perfect lob to Mobley. And the reason he demands this sort of attention on closeouts is because he's one of the best shooters on the planet. I don't just mean in transition. If the guy isn't accounted for at all times as a spot-up shooter, it's basically like giving the offense a layup. This season, he's attempted 139 catch-and-shoot threes, and he's made a scorching 46.8% of them. Even if we include last year where he dealt with some weird injury stuff and look at the past 3 seasons, he still made 42% of his 457 attempts. So, just like in transition, he'll often spot up in the half court, where he's not just a threat to shoot or pass, but to explode on a drive. He's elite in off-the-catch situations, consistently drawing closeouts, burning them, and picking apart the defense from inside. And it's this off-ball capability that enables the Cavs to function at the level that they do. You can put the ball in the hands of guys like Mitchell, Mobley, or any one of their backup guards, and Garland will be able to seamlessly play off of them and elevate their games. That's not only through his off-the-catch game though. There are a lot of players around the league who demand closeouts, consistently beat them, and keep the defense in rotation. Where Garland separates himself as an off-ball player is with the way he never stops moving. Take this play for example. As soon as a shot goes up, Garland starts to crash from the perimeter, but he's not after the offensive glass. He sees that Allen's in great position to secure a second chance and wants to put himself in a position to be a quick outlet. Nobody follows him, so he's left with a ton of room from 3. Here's an example where he's spotting up. You actually can't see him right away, but he's on the right side of your screen. When Okoro drives, watch him sprint from up top to the corner to make himself a target. Then he's left with space to drive as he draws help to the paint and kicks it out to Niang for a wide open 3. There are so many instances of him breaking down the defense with a simple perimeter relocation. This time he goes from the corner to the wing, and because of that shooting threat, 2 defenders close out to him, leaving Okoro all alone in the dunker spot. It can't be overstated how much ball movement is unlocked when your lead ball handler isn't just capable of creating advantages, but playing off of them and making quick decisions to connect the offense. This really stood out when OKC went to a zone defense in their first matchup. Garland's instant decision making as a driver and extra passer just picked them apart. And because he's so good at attacking off the catch or on the move like this, the Cavs will run action that's specifically designed to get him to do exactly that. Sometimes they'll start him in the corner while one of their bigs dribbles towards him to hand it off. I don't even think instant decision making does this pass any justice. Another thing you'll see them do is start him on one of the elbows and have him flash out to the perimeter off of what looks like a flare screen. But the goal is actually to clear the middle so that he can attack in the pick and roll. The blend of on and off ball capability is just such a headache for opposing defenders, and that's easiest to notice with the way he passes, then immediately relocates to find something else. This part of his game is very Steph Curry-esque. In the event that he doesn't create any space for himself, he'll get rid of the ball and cut, and like I said, as soon as he touches the paint, he isn't going to make the wrong decision. Although it is worth noting that when he's looking to attack with a live dribble, more times than not, he's going to create something, which brings me back to what I said about him being impossible to stay in front of. He's ridiculously shifty and can change directions on a whim. So when he weaponizes that with combinations of hesitations and crossovers, even the best defenders have trouble keeping him in front. That ability to change directions really stands out whenever the Cavs set one of those wing screens. He's looking to turn the corner and attack the switch, but can just as easily cross back over and explode in the opposite direction. In addition to being really shifty, he's great at changing speeds. And those two traits come together on a play like this, where he crosses over to reject a screen, gets cut off, then hesitates to freeze the defender before accelerating around his hip on a drive. Garland's really twitchy, so you never know when he's actually going to take his first step. He's also really fast, so by the time you realize he's taken his first step, it's probably too late to recover. The actual ability to start and stop on a dime is only elevated by his handle. I don't think it's a hot take to say he has the best hesitation in the game, and he'll constantly use it to keep defenders on their heels. Then, because of the way he changes directions, he can throw these hesitations into crossovers while taking that first step. I wish he got a lot more credit because he really is one of the most impressive ball handlers we've ever seen. Not just the versatility and creativity to create attack angles out of thin air, but the security to keep it alive and sneak through the tiniest gaps on the floor as he gets to the rim and collapses the defense. When going to these hesitations and changes of direction to get into attacks, it's also important to keep in mind that if at any point his defender sits back to play the drive, he'll just step back into an outside shot. I talked about how Garland's one of the best shooters on the planet. That isn't just off the catch. This season, he's attempted 182 off the dribble threes, and he's made an impressive 39% of them. There are only 5 other players in the league who match or exceed both of those marks. It's not like this is some new addition either. If we go back 4 seasons, we're left with a massive sample size of 883 attempts, and he's made about 39.5%. So we're talking about one of the most lethal shots in basketball. One thing that's always stood out about his pull-up shooting is the speed of his release and how he's able to get the ball up off the floor in seemingly impossible windows. That's especially noticeable off of those wing screens. Remember, I said that most defenses choose to switch. If that second defender doesn't jump out, he'll use the space to pull the trigger. In addition to a quick release, he's got an adjustable release, which is something only the very best shooters can do. What I mean by that is on a play like this where a lengthier defender is able to get a hand up, he can release the ball higher and with more arc to get it up over the contest with just as much accuracy. He's also comfortable shooting from any foot angle. Here's an example where he uses his handle to create separation, then up fakes his defender out of the play. It's not easy to readjust your momentum and still get that shot off in a timely manner. I genuinely think you could make the argument that he's a top 3 shooter in the league right now. There truly isn't anything he can do from behind the arc with a live dribble, and that blends beautifully with his shifty driving game because he'll sometimes start a drive, force the defender into a backpedal, then step back to create all the space he needs from 3. Of course, that takes me back to his elite ball handling, as he'll throw together any combination of size-ups and moves with the ability to get into his shot with jarring speed. And remember when I said that I believe he has the best hesitation in the game? Imagine how that looks when you pair it with top-tier shooting. He's able to get defenders off their feet entirely, which then opens up even more for him as a driver. Speaking of the driving game though, I do think it's worth mentioning that he really isn't a major interior scoring threat. On the season, he's shooting about 61% at the rim, which lands him in the 36th percentile among all players, and it's really just a function of athletic limitations. He has the tools to get there, but with limited strength, length, and vertical pop, there really isn't much going for him when it comes to converting. Pretty much any athletically limited small guard who's ever been a great scorer at the rim has had some outlier touch. I'm thinking guys like Steph or Kyrie. Garland has great touch, but not quite like them, so when he has to rush layups to avoid shot blockers, they just aren't hitting at the same rate. However, I do think he makes up a lot of that ground as a scorer with his use of the floater. On the season, he's shooting about 54% on shots from 3 to 10 feet away from the basket, and it can't be overstated how lethal of a counter this is. In the event that he beats his man, then a rim protector's in position to turn him away, he can just stop short for a still very efficient shot. Because of that ability to change speeds, he pretty much always has access to these looks, as all it takes is a sudden deceleration to create the space. On that same note, something else I've really liked is the way he started weaponizing those breaks to force contact, like on this one where he goes to the classic Trae Young move to draw some free throws. The floater is obviously his go-to scoring move out of drives, but occasionally you'll also see him stop on a dime for a mid-range jumper that he hits at a very high clip. And the totality of it all has taken his inside-the-arc scoring to a completely different level this year. I actually viewed 2-point scoring as one of his bigger weaknesses as a player a few years ago. When he took that all-star leap in 2022, he jumped up to 51%, but he never took that next leap, and if we include the league's average, you'll notice that he never actually got above that mark. Until this year, where he's all the way up to over 56%, a considerable leap from where he's been over the past half-decade. When you pair high efficiency inside the arc scoring with the ability to get wherever you want, whenever you want with a live dribble, you're left with a player who's consistently collapsing the defense, who then has the passing to take advantage. When it comes to making reads at the rim in particular, the way he manipulates rim protectors and sneaks the ball through tiny windows is truly something special. And going back to what I said about being an instant decision maker, all he has to do is see an opening for the most minuscule of moments to take advantage. Now, if you combine everything I've talked about up to this point, from the ball handling and passing to the pull-up shooting and the use of the floater, it all comes together in the pick and roll where he's an absolute maestro. Of course, it goes without saying that if he uses a screen and is left with space to shoot, he'll just step into an off-the-dribble 3. And because of that super quick release, even if the big comes up near the level of the screen, if they don't commit, he's comfortable taking that shot. Then in the event that he threatens the pull-up jumper and the big does commit, well, then he's got an easy pass to the short roller. As a result, it's pretty imperative that the point of attack defender runs Garland off the line. Remember that use of the hesitation though. This time he gets Maxey to leave his feet with nobody left to stop him from getting to that automatic floater. The way he uses hesitations to threaten the jumper off of screens is a thing of beauty, and as long as defenders react, he basically has free lanes into the paint where he can do what he does best. Just like in isolation, this works both ways. While the threat of the pull-up creates easier driving lanes, if he hesitates and his defender starts to overplay the drive, he can just as easily step back for a knockdown jumper. I want to go back to the driving for a second though, because he's most lethal as an offensive player when he's turning the corner off of screens. If the big is sitting back in a deep drop, he's looking to get to the paint for that floater. And this blends perfectly with the passing, because if he starts to go to the floater and the big steps up, he can mask it into a lob to the roller. Thanks to that elite handle, he's able to keep his dribble alive at all times, and it creates this game of cat and mouse with opposing bigs that he seemingly never loses. In the same way that the threat of his scoring opens up passing opportunities, if the big overplays the pass, he'll call his own number. And this really stands out whenever he operates in between. He's a lightning quick decision maker, but also patient with the use of his live dribble to hunt for open space, which again puts bigs in an impossible spot. Don't step up, and he's got a 50 to 60% floater. Step up even a little bit, and he's spoon feeding his roller at the rim. He turns the pick and roll into a math problem. The idea of drop coverage is to keep the action a 2-on-2, but because he's so good at attacking it, a third defender usually has to get involved. More times than not, that means the weak side defender is going to rotate down to tag the roll. On this one, Garland counters by throwing a live dribble skip pass with his offhand, leading to a quality 3. Some teams will instead send help from the nail to tag the roll, but all that does is create the same sort of opportunities for Garland to find a shooter. And if Garland's attacking the middle of the floor himself, some teams will send help from the nail to turn away the drive. Remember though, he's got the handle to sneak through those gaps and touch the paint anyways. If he's attacking an empty corner, the defense will probably try to push him baseline, but he's a master at using those Nash dribbles under the basket to find open space, so there really isn't anything the defense can do to make him uncomfortable. And you'd think that with the amount of double big lineups the Cavs run, teams would be able to exploit the lack of shooting. But because Garland basically never misses an interior passing read, they can get away with spacing the floor in ways that other teams can't. You'll very commonly see them start either Allen or Mobley in the weak side corner, and that's not so they can spot up and shoot, that's so they can dive baseline to counter help, where Garland will find them for easy points. It's pretty clear to me that it just isn't in the defense's best interest to let Garland get anywhere near the paint. He's just too good of a decision maker and passer to compromise the defense like that. So that's why a lot of teams choose to put 2 on the ball, either in a hedge or a trap, which then creates its own set of issues. That's actually what the Thunder did in their first matchup, having iHeart hedge all ball screens, and Garland got the ball to the short roll for easy offense every time. Not only do both of Cleveland's bigs cause mismatch problems, they're legitimately good passers. So with one in the short roll attacking 4-on-3 and another diving from the corner, it's really tough to stop them. I'd say there's only one read Garland struggles to make out of the pick and roll sometimes, and it's on a play like this where he draws 2 to the ball and the weak side help rotates early to eliminate the short roll. The skip is the obvious counter, and I do think he's starting to hit these with more and more consistency. If that's a read he can master, we're legitimately looking at one of the 2 or 3 best pick and roll ball handlers in the game. And to be completely honest, he's already worthy of being in that mix. On all pick and rolls this season, he's generated 1.14 points per possession, good for the 92nd percentile among all players. And that's while also being near the top in volume, ranking 14th at about 15 possessions a game. The pick and roll is definitely where he's at his best, but as I've discussed throughout this video, it's only the tip of the iceberg with him. I talked about how his off-ball game allows him to coexist with guys like Mitchell and Mobley, and that matters a lot. That stuff doesn't show up on the box score though, so I think he ends up getting penalized for simply playing on a better team than a lot of the players he's compared to. The combination of transition brilliance, isolation capability, and the way he attacks every pick and roll coverage would allow him to produce those extreme volume numbers you see from other guys. And I think that's reflected in the minutes he plays without Mitchell. The Cavs stagger their rotation, so Garland ends up playing about half of his minutes as the lone primary ball handler, and it's in those minutes where his numbers really stand out. This season, he's played 656 of them, and in that time, he's put up 29.5 points, 8.9 assists, and just 2.8 turnovers every 75 possessions. It's not like he's been inefficient either. He shot over 56% on twos, 43% from three, and almost 64% true shooting, while the teams had a remarkable offensive rating of 129.3. Now, this doesn't mean that if the Cavs got rid of Mitchell, Garland would all of a sudden become a hybrid of prime Steph Curry and Steve Nash. That's not what I'm saying, but I think this is just a peek into the type of volume he'd be capable of producing if he didn't have to coexist with another superstar offensive player. After all, he's already ridiculously efficient in the opportunities he does get. I mentioned how he's in the 92nd percentile in pick and roll efficiency. He's also in the 89th percentile in transition efficiency and the 86th percentile in isolation efficiency. The last player to reach all three of those marks in a single season was LeBron James in 2013 when he won his 4th MVP and arguably hit his peak. What we're witnessing with Garland isn't just a good offensive engine or even just an all-star caliber player. The combination of on and off ball brilliance, the efficiency across the board, and the versatility to play any role has turned him into one of the best offensive players on the planet, currently leading one of the best offensive units in NBA history. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn my post notifications on to be first on more content. If you're interested in my more in-depth research, make sure to check out the Hoop Venue podcast and my social media profiles. You can find those links in the description. Feel free to let me know down in the comments what you think of Garland. As always, I hope you all have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.